Hello everyone. So my purpose with this video is to be informative and show my process. Since I'm just getting back into doing art more frequently, I tried to keep some simple goals in mind when choosing what type of art that I wanted to make. First off, I wanted it to be relatively straightforward, a simpler painting with no background. And secondly, I wanted it to be mentally engaging for me. So I picked my dog Lyra, and I found this cute photo of her. Then I found some art online that inspired me. Here you can see Julia Leapard on Instagram, which I'll link in the description. I really enjoy the use of color and line in their portraits, and I thought that they would be really nice to study. So let's get into it. I started with a sketch and a flat color underneath. I started blocking in the rough color. I'm not being too precious about this. I'm just trying to look at the reference photo and look at my sketch and apply blocks of color where it seems like it would fit. I like to start with the eye, especially on pet portraits, because this is just what our eyes are drawn to when we first look at this type of picture. The eye is really important to draw the viewer and just get them really interested in seeing what's going on. So, and also as an artist, I like to look at my painting and be drawn in by the eye and the expression. You can see I kind of just roughed it in, roughed out the edges, and then I start working out from there. One of the things with the art I'm referencing is there's a lot of sort of solid blocks of color that make up the hair and the different sections. So you'll see as I'm painting, the first thing I do is I just start blocking out these shapes, and I'm not too worried about getting extra detail in there. One thing I struggled with a lot on this painting is what brush to use. I was trying to use brushes that I haven't used before, so I was really having a hard time getting used to them, and I was having a hard time getting used to the way the brush feels and the way it blends. I was having difficulties getting the points on the fur. You can see I just move slowly, sort of outward from where I started. I get a little distracted and just, one stroke will take me up into the ear or wherever. The brushes I did end up using were Kyle's brushes. You can see I've got them highlighted at the top, mostly his Pencil 3C brush set. I used this number 7 sized one a lot. And then I also used some of my other brushes that I have collected over the years. I've got this 21 pencil brush and these other dry media brushes, and then I also used a few brushes from Mimi's digital brush pack 1, 2, and 3, mostly from the pencils and crayons set for texture. Here I'm just back to blocking out the fur. I'm trying to just make sure that the colors are varied, individual, so you can tell them apart, but they're not too dissimilar. All right, point. So left half of the face, I'm feeling good to start moving on from. So I start blocking in the rough fur on the other side. Here I decided I didn't want to paint the eyeball again from scratch. So I copy pasted it to the other side, did a good old flip. I did it with the ear also. You use a warp tool, you just kind of wiggle it around, make it kind of match the sketch underneath, and voila, I didn't have to paint 2 ears and 2 eyes. I saved a little bit of time. I don't always recommend doing that, but in this instance, that's what I felt like doing. So here I'm just working on blocking out the fur. I'm trying to work from the outside in because of the way the fur overlaps, and then it's easier to get the points to go over the fur behind it if I'm working from the back of the head to the front. So I'm adding a lot of these little outlines around the shapes. That's just what it kind of looks like in the reference art, where it kind of just looks a little more sketchy rather than totally realistically painted. So I really like that art style or look, and I'm trying to simulate it in my own work. Here I add a little bit of highlight using soft light and a really big soft brush. I didn't feel like the eyebrows got bright enough in my color that I put down, so I'm just using a layer adjustment to make sure that those really pop. Here I switched to using a recording of within Photoshop itself rather than in another window. I was just trying to hope that I could show some of the way I set up my layers and maybe more of the way the brush and the mouse are moving. Well, not the mouse, the pen are moving on the canvas. I'm really struggling here with how dark or what color I want the end of the nose to be, and I kind of settle on just what I had painted, but it's okay to, take a second and just try and experiment with those colors in Photoshop. And you can see I just have the layer off in case I want it another time. I moved on to painting the mouth. This is obviously a really difficult area of the face. There's lots of depth in the mouth that you're trying to capture. So after I get it roughed in, I just kind of move on to some more general face and fur area. I don't always have to hyper focus on one little thing, and as I've zoomed out there, I pick up on little areas I want to adjust, like that spot by the eye or the spot on the ear. I think, you just kind of let your eye tell you, what needs to be adjusted. So here I'm just trying to pull those basic fur shapes into the cheeks. I don't want it to be too hyper detailed, but just get the basic sort of shapes and idea. At this point, I'm not working on too many layers. You can see my flat, I've got the rough color, which is clipping masked into my flat. I've got the sketch on top of that, and then I am painting on top of that. I don't generally paint with a ton of layers, but you know, it can be however you feel like. So here I saw that her face actually sort of ends and then the long hair under her ears begins, so I'm adjusting this part of the painting to make the fur a little shorter on that side. I added those little spots on her face because that's what she has in real life. She's got little orange spots on her nose, but I ultimately decided that they were just distracting and I got rid of them. So I go back into the mouth now. I decide it's time to detail it a bit. I end up using a different brush in the mouth than I use on a lot of the face. It's a sketchier brush, which I think kind of gets the details across without being too detailed or too flat. Here you can see I'm struggling a bit with this patch of fur on the left side of the face. I'm just not sure where I want the lighting to be or how bright I want it to be. I want the lighting to be on the right, but in the reference photo, there's light there on the left side, and so it's just me fighting with what I see in the reference photo versus what I want to do in the art. So for this part, you saw I blocked in the fur pretty roughly, and then I went back and I'm adding all the lines and I'm further adding highlights. I added a soft light layer, now I'm working in some multiply layers, just trying to get this section darker. I'm actually lasso tooling to create these little sections that I'm roughly coloring in with a textured brush, and then using layer styles, multiply, soft light, to get them lighter or darker. Now here what I've shown is I've actually merged all of my layers so that I can do a bit of erasing on the outside. Just trying to get that fur really sharp on the outside. I smoothed out a little section of the head. And now I'm moving on into the flowers. I like to have my reference images nice and close here, especially because I'm using a lot of the colors from the image itself just so I don't have to make it up. I kind of started painting in a style that was different from the rest of the portrait, so I ended up re-going over it with a different brush just to make it sort of match the style that I was already doing. So here we're getting back to the end. You can see I'm going back around with the lasso tool and just really trying to roughly adjust the lighting using soft light and multiplier. In the end, I decided to go back and put the petal of this flower over the rest of the dog, just compositionally. I thought that looked nicer. And here you go, it's the end. Overall, I think the piece turned out really well. It's not perfect, but I'm ready to say goodbye to it and to move on to my next one. Thanks everyone for watching. I'd really appreciate a like and a subscribe, and I hope to see you next time.